This is David Merritt, writer of episode 909, Boukman Baptiste. You're listening to the Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Well, if Aaron abandoned me, I sure wouldn't keep the empire going. Welcome to everyone to the award-winning The Blacklist Exposed podcast. I am Agent Troy Heinrichs.
I got some good and bad news for you. Never mind. I'm Agent Aaron Peterson, and I agree. There's nothing sweeter than grandparents reading to their grandkids. Am I right? Yeah.
Aww.
Thanks for joining us yet again for number 164 on the Blacklist, Boukman Baptiste, written by David Merritt and directed by Andrew McCarthy. Show notes and other intel for this episode of The Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com.
Well, if you're new to the show, we do a little thing called the Profiling Question of the Week, where we go over some stuff from last week and get your thoughts on closing up shop there before we get into this week's case profile, where we tell you everything that happened in our own unique way, and then go into special agent intel with stuff that you guys thought, or theories, or random wonderings that you could share with your grandkids in the future. Potentially.
All right, well, we're going to start with our profiling question from our last week, which was, is Red justified in blaming Dembe? 55% said, no, this is all Red's fault. 55% said, no, this is all Red's fault. I'm just reiterating that. Because apparently some people said, it's impossible. Why does Aaron think such things? I'm just saying 55% of the population thinks so.
And I'm just letting you know now, 55%ers, you have some real hate Twitter coming your way. How could they pick on Red for saying such things?
I don't know. But since Red apologized this episode, does that mean those 55% are correct?
I think so.
No, not necessarily, but it's definitely not. Yeah, definitely, because Red is not justified in blaming Dembe.
Correct.
Yeah. Sometimes it just is. Things just are. 35% said yes. Wrong. But this isn't something that should kill a friendship. I agree. If he was justified in blaming Dembe for the death of his whatever, those are the kinds of things that kill friendships where I come from. I'm just saying.
But
you agree? Do you disagree?
Well, I mean, I like the way this is, right? It isn't something that shouldn't kill a friendship. This is the first time in how many years that he messed up.
Where I come from, man, you mess up. You mess up that big. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but he didn't know he didn't know he messed up that big. It's not his fault that Liz was carrying a tracker on him. It was still working. I don't
know why my noise for whacked is because that doesn't sound right at all. Like I can't do a gunshot apparently. Bang bang.
Sounds like the end of the Love Shack song. That's what that sounds like.
Well, that's a totally different. Sorry. 5% said no, but a stern warning never hurts. Aw. And 5% said yes, Red trusted him with his life. All right, well, we kind of have our answers, but we're still going to move on. Questions for next week. Who tipped off Van Dyke? That's our profiling question for next week. We're going to talk more about the actual was Red justified situation when we get into the case profile and characters.
That's right. So before someone accuses us of messing with their family, let's go ahead and get into it.
Well, we start with Liz dying again. Does Megan still get a check every time they kill her? How does that work? Is that like a bonus? She's just still getting blacklist checks and she's wondering why. I haven't been on the show all season. Why do I keep getting all this money?
Every time you play a song, the writer gets the royalties. So why not every time you show me dying? Do I not get the royalties as well?
It's kind of amazing, actually. Well, we've gotten Ressler's take on his situation during the Liz time. Now it's Dembe's turn. Hess, Ray, Colby. Marvin knows about 3 hits. That's right. Marvin Gerard is back. He knows about 3 hits, and Red knows nothing about it because he's out of touch. He's too busy over there steaming, losing his love, thinking Dembe betrayed him, and a lot of other things. A strike team has taken out Red's associates. It has to be an inside person, he thinks, and he won't work with Dembe. So clues lead to the Port of Baltimore and a 4th Red spot, Reginald Lawler. And apparently they're trying to get to Dembe. Dembe is the target. Boukman Baptiste is the man behind it all, because we find out through this episode, Dembe accidentally killed his 10-year-old son, which is also kind of what led to Dembe becoming an FBI agent. There's a little bit more, but let's stop there and just kind of decompress. So what did you think about this way to relay Dembe's story?
I thought it was actually pretty decent overall, because I love how they go to the apartment, they sit down, there's the envelope, the water, and they go to sleep, and then Red wakes up and disappears. And Dembe's left with like, WTF? Like,
yeah, he literally spells it out. It's a weird thing.
Like, nothing to do. What happens now? And he's got to figure it out. He can't find Red anywhere, but there's still this thing to keep going. The blacklist still exists. There's still money to be made. There's still people that got to get their checks, and it's got to happen. So he does the best he can, and the intel told him that there was no chance that the son would be there, and the intel was bad. And, is that on Dembe? Maybe. Is it on some people that he trusted and maybe shouldn't have, or maybe they were trying to dupe Dembe in order to get leverage because they knew Red wasn't around? Maybe. So
hey, hang on. Maybe if you gun down a car and people in the car die, that's definitely on you. If your intel's bad, but you still shot the car up.
Well, the intel was still like they knew that Boukman Baptiste was coming after Red's organization, so it's like Dembe was justified in going after Boukman Baptiste.
I get your logic, and I see where you're going. I'm just saying that kid's still dead because of Dembe. Like, he has responsibility.
Oh, for sure.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And the FBI has very loose restrictions, apparently.
Very loose restrictions.
For all the people that told me Dembe's never murdered anyone, what are you talking about? If you never watched this show.
But yeah, I think overall, I like the story. I like the background. I like to see what happened. I like they got Isabella involved again. I think that's interesting because the show's obviously been about, parents and their children. And it was all around, I think, really quality television again for the hour. I think the only problem with it is it's like, can we just not talk about Liz anymore?
Yeah, I kind of love this episode. Just more proof that Hisham is a really good actor, and when you give him the opportunity, he can really shine. So it was nice, and he's just so, he doesn't overdo anything. He's not going big. He's not going Broadway or anything with any of his affections or afflictions, or in terms of how his performance is put on stage. He's very subtle. He's very reserved. He keeps in mind who the character is, which is very obvious as he plays the role. And I like that a lot. And it was just nice to see him get an opportunity to really show what he can do as an actor. I know we normally don't go into actors, but it's nice because he doesn't really get too many full-fledged episodes. And I thought he really, really shined here. I would say it was a stellar performance.
Yeah, and the Dembe character written true to form. Even when he was faced with the challenge of like, oh, Boukman's coming for me, he still has this like reserved moment of like, I'm a man of belief, of faith, with the Muslim background for the character, walking his enlightened path. And it's not like he like jumps and gets all hopped up and angry and everything. He accepts responsibility for what happened. And he's apologetic for what happened, and he tries to figure out a way out of it because of what happened. And I think that just is a testament to there are other ways to handle problems other than violence.
Well, he tried to handle the problems through violence initially. So there are, but apparently you got to start with violence to get to the nonviolence. Yeah, whatever. We're here. He felt bad. That's what led him to becoming an FBI agent. Now, still, this is probably as close as I'm going to get to accepting that the FBI would take Mr. Dembe, because you know how I feel about that. I've talked about it on the show.
From a director of the FBI who wasn't really wanting to be part of the FBI anymore, but his vouch is still good.
Apparently, you could just vouch people into the FBI. If I knew that, I'm just going to go. Well, it's always who you know, right?
Yeah.
So, whatever happened, it's the closest I can get to swallowing that as a. It's just like, all right, I got it. I'm moving on. I'll take it. He wants to make right the wrong that he did. I appreciate that. I understand that. Still think it's a little weird for FBI restrictions, but I come from a criminal law background. That's probably why it's hard for me to swallow. But I'm moving past it.
There were
Last
2
I'll mention of
years. There were 2 years
No, it's
between
not-
these
I'll mention
spots,
it.
right? So at least maybe he actually did finish Quantico, unlike Liz.
Yeah, I guess we didn't get that part of the episode
Right.
where he went to Quantico and did all that. Anyway, Baptiste threatens to kill Dembe's daughter Isabella, then promptly takes her hostage. And Dembe, this was a nice turn of events, I thought. He's totally willing to throw Red under a bus to save her. He even pulls a gun on Marvin, and I don't know if he was going to use it, but I thought he was considering it.
I think he was considering it. You don't pull it out unless you're considering it.
What did you think about that turn? That turn in particular where he's willing to go against Red and he just doesn't care because it's his kid, which is what Red would do.
And I think that's just it. I think it's a moment for Dembe to realize that maybe not that Red was justified in all the crap that he did and not telling Liz everything that happened and blah, 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 blah. But I think in that moment, he kind of understood. He's like, it's my kid. I'm going to do whatever it takes to save my kid. And it's a way that he's like, I don't work for Red anymore, so I really don't care what his operation looks like. I work for the FBI. And his duty is to whatever he's currently beholden to, and his duty is to be an officer. His duty as an FBI agent is also that this country doesn't negotiate with terrorists. So you got to keep that in mind at the same time. But he, I think he was justified in saying, yeah, I'll give you Red's operation to get my daughter back. Sure. That's what I would do for my kid.
But he still had respect for Red, even after Red accused him of some really kind of horrible things and made him feel like dirt. He still had respect. When he says it was an honor protecting you or serving you, I can't remember the exact line, but it was an honor. I thought that was a beautiful moment. He never loses who he is in the moment.
Right.
This is who I am. It was an honor to protect you, but this is my daughter and we're not negotiating. I don't work for you anymore. I'm done. So I thought that was just a really good moment, really well written and conceived situation. All right. Well, Red agrees to help Dembe, which probably saves Marvin from at least a kneecapping. He doesn't want him hurt. He doesn't want Dembe hurt. Sends Wicha and company in after him. Wolves take, the sheep get taken like that. I mean, we've heard many versions of that concept in many shows, but I like that. Wolves take, sheep get taken. Wicha does this badass knife murder, and Isabella is saved. So that's we're going to get into the characters and kind of dive into a little more detail, especially on Red and Dembe. But overall, that was the episode. I kind of love this episode. I think it was even better than last week's. And I'm not usually a fan of just one character specific. And I mean, Brothers, I think was great. But I thought this was necessary. I think it filled in a lot of background. It gave some perspective on situations that we don't normally get, I think, on current topical situations. So what did you think overall of the episode?
Yeah, overall, I think it was a great hour of television. I think it was a necessary Blacklist episode to hopefully finally put Liz in the grave permanently, because it gave us the one thing.
We've said that for like 8 episodes. She still keeps dying over and over and over again. I guess they're trying to traumatize us like Red was traumatized.
Maybe that's exactly what it is, right?
That's the plan.
In order to
Makes
believe
sense,
where
though.
Red's psyche is at this point, they got to put us through it too. But at least this one moves the story forward, right? Ram did some detective work.
Absolutely.
Dembe did some detective work. We finally have here's the nugget to come back for next week in a greater quote unquote mythology, if you will. It felt the last 2 weeks have finally felt like the show is back on track.
Well, and we should note, next week there isn't an episode, right? Because of Olympics?
Yeah, well, next week they're off and then the Olympics start, so we're not back until the end of February, I believe, is the next episode.
Yeah, so sorry guys. If you were really getting into, I'm back into Blacklist mode, and put it on hold, because it's going to be the end of February, like February 25th or 6th or something like that.
Don't worry, though. There's like 13 episodes still left in the season, and it's going to be like bang, 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 week on week for the final push. Yep. So
yeah, it's going to fly.
This is a great way to pause, right? Because this is typically 9 episodes is your normal fall season, and you get that
leaves
break
you with
Christmas.
leaves you with the big what if or who if.
Yeah.
Who is? What question is that? I don't know, but who is the guy or gal? Who is the person behind Van Dyke?
Which is interesting because, like I said, like, wouldn't it be cool if it was, somebody from the old guard or whatever, Russia back end, like gets this Townsend's information gets leaked and someone's like, oh, I know who this is now. And so there's a secret from the dark that's coming back up from the past. I mean, that would be a cool thing to see. And maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe it is someone from the past. We just needed 9 episodes to get there.
Exactly. Well, let's get into characters so we can break some of this down, man.
Yeah, there's no music this week. It's all pretty much just background stuff from Mr. Porter. So you want to hear all the great songs on the Blacklist, you can certainly do that over on the playlist, both for Apple Music and Spotify. Although I have seen that the Spotify list hasn't been updated yet for this season. So if someone's listening that's in charge of that, get on that. That'd be great. But all the rest of them for season 9 are on the Apple Music playlist. You can get both those links on the website at theblacklistexposed.com.
All right. Well, characters. Some characters didn't get a whole lot to do, but some got a little bit to do. But this is mostly Red and Dembe throughout the episode. Cooper won't kick Dembe off the task force, which worked out well because now we realize that he shouldn't have been, even if Red thought so. Like, it just made no sense because of the situation. It wasn't his fault what happened to Liz. Blame him for the letter, for telling the truth that he shouldn't have told. Okay, Red, you have a right there, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, the map basically looked like Van Dyke was playing Wordle, like everybody else. Yeah. Like, guess 1, guess 2, Wordle, guess 3. Man. Oh, I found him at the coffee shop on guess 4.
Yeah, so there's somebody else taking that picture. That's why Dembe didn't spot them, because he didn't recognize them, which means it's somebody we probably haven't seen yet.
Correct.
Agreed?
Agree.
Okay, well, Cooper said, no, he doesn't run my task force. Dembe, you're not going anywhere. You're doing a great job. You can stay. Plus, I stuck my neck out for you, and you got to keep proving me right. Otherwise, it's going to make me look bad. Love the conversation between Cooper and Dembe. This is kind of something I wanted to talk about, because during the episode, there's an honest conversation between two black men whose side doesn't really get covered enough. Our people need us here, fighting for our people, for everyone. There's a lot of issues in society still, especially in this country, where black men are proportionately over-targeted by police officers. It's documented. The statistics back it up. Anybody that wants to argue it, go argue it with yourself. I'm not having that conversation because it's a fact. So, Troy, some people said that this was a little too on the nose, this whole concept. I mean, I think maybe, but I also think sometimes you got to be direct so people understand where someone else's perspective is coming from. And I thought this was an important perspective to have, especially when you find out David, the writer, his father was a police officer. So obviously this is something that I'm sure he's very familiar with because his father was a police officer, where people of his color look to him to not be a police officer because they see the police officer as, and many in that community see police officers as the enemy.
Which Isabella talks about, right? In that conversation that Isabella has with Dembe. It's like, why are you selling out, basically? Yeah.
Yes, very much so. But in the Cooper conversation, they're very much talking about the advantages and the pluses and how, yes, some people will look at that and say you're betraying us and it's going to hurt, and she's not the first person that's going to say that. It's going to happen more and more. And it's something that I honestly probably haven't thought that much about. You know, I've always thought about the other side where black people are disproportionately affected by police officer shootings and whatnot. And there's a problem there that needs to be solved. I never think about it from this perspective. I really liked having this perspective to hear. What say you?
I agree 100%. What I loved about the episode is, I mean, it's like, it's hard to talk about the topic, right? Let's be clear. And it's hard to talk about it, especially as two white males, right? Because we have privilege and all of that stuff. For me, it's like the Isabella conversation when she's like running down the names. It's like, yes, the names are important. Absolutely 100%. Does it need to be so overtly done in a television show when you're trying to escape the world and just be entertained? That's where people might have an issue, right? On the other side of the coin, the thing that happens between Dembe and Cooper in that conversation, that is the thing that's super important. Like, that's where you sit there and understand how you start to, bring the problem to light, fix the problem. You do it from the inside. You really sit down and say, hey, in order to get respect for our community, we have to show how that happens. And we have to be better than the other people. And the way we be better than the other people is we follow the law and we do the things that are lawful in order to make that happen. And I really enjoyed watching the two of them have that understanding of like, it might be a little bit hard coming back into your community and wearing a badge, but at the same time, we need more people like this to have badges. We need more people to be represented in a lot of places, corporate America, boards, etc. Like if we have more diversity overall, the world's a better place. And not just in skin tone, diverse thought, diverse everything.
And I'll be honest. I know people always say that it's hard to have the conversation. And I don't know if it's, I've told you this before. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood. So
Same.
It's not a hard conversation for me to have because we had it all the time. Like we talked about it all the time. So it wasn't, to me, I don't, I know people always say that and I'm just like, why? Why can't you? The only time it's really hard to talk about something is if you're part of the problem is the way I look at it. And I do everything I can to make sure I'm not. So I love because that conversation specifically was just so something I haven't heard much of.
Agreed.
Nobody ever talks about that. And it was nice to have that. Hey, these are real issues that people of color have to deal with in their own families that we never even think about because they see the police as the enemy. And I think if you were ever around a factor of people of color where the police are prominent, I'm trying to say this as nice as I can, you would see exactly what they're talking about because it's a fact. It's hard to dodge it. I still have people in my life. I'm sure you have people in your life that don't see it that way, that want to turn a blind eye to it and whatnot. It's just a fact. It is not something you can really debate anymore. The statistics back it up 100%. And it's a lot of it's a culture change. And to make that culture change, to change that whole brotherhood of the blue and all that nonsense, you need to get a lot of diversity into those groups. You need to have people of all walks of life, colors, creeds, whatever, to make any real substantial change, along with procedures and politics.
Yeah, and the one thing that I really enjoyed about this is that it's not just like, blacks versus whites, in having that conversation. It was the understanding that even within the black community, there's different perspectives and different understandings.
Sure.
There was a
interesting.
Survivor this last cycle had a very similar situation where I think there was 4 black players left. And even though, it's a game, right? But at the same time, the one black guy was like the deciding vote to vote out one of his, black friends. And how could you turn on the black people? How could you turn on them? Like, how could you turn on your community? And he literally had a breakdown on TV about that exact experience. Like, you don't turn your back on the community and do something you need to do. But at the end of the day, like at the end of the day, you can't change anything unless you're part of the change. And that's what Dembe wants to do. He wants to be part of the change and wants to make a difference.
And I can, even though I never witnessed this aspect of it, I can see it because none of my black friends wanted to be cops. They all hated cops. And with good reason in our neighborhood anyway.
Right.
So that was a great moment. And, I get it's an escapist television show, but I think it's important sometimes to have those moments so you do have those conversations. And I don't think people should ever be afraid of those conversations. They should have them.
What art isn't a depiction of what we're going through in our own personal lives, right? You don't
Marvel.
Yeah. you shut up. Stan Lee was a freaking superhero. Look how long
maybe Peter Parker.
Look how long he lived. It's art, paintings, music. There's it's your expression of what you're feeling, thinking, doing in that moment when you're an artist. It's the same thing here. Like, if you're going to have a politically charged television episode, it's still art. You're going to have to write what and write where you're coming from and write your perspective. And I really appreciate the fact that we got that perspective coming out of David Merritt this week.
And I hope it inspires other people just to have, and I know it sounds weird that it really bothers me, and it doesn't bother me because I know you didn't mean it that way, but just whenever people say it's hard to talk about because we're white, it just bugs me because it shouldn't be that hard to talk about. If something is a fact, we should be talking about it, because nothing's going to get better if we don't talk about it, if you just ignore it, or if you get, you're afraid to touch on it because you're afraid you're going to be, I don't know, canceled by having a conversation, an honest conversation about something like that. It impacts the world. You should talk about it because it won't get better until you do.
And and I'm not saying like not talk about it. I'm saying like, I know
what you meant, but a lot of people, especially,
don't avoid the conversation. I'm saying I want to have the conversation. I want to be part of it.
People won't.
I don't have a leg to stand on from a perspective because I don't sit in that community. I don't have the authoritative voice.
Totally understand.
I need to be
that.
listening.
I definitely am not saying I have any authority on anything. I'm just saying everybody should have those conversations about everything that affects society as a whole.
Yeah.
If it's sexuality, whatever it is, you should have the conversations, because I don't think anyone's going to learn anything if you don't talk open and honest about it. I don't think anyone's going to grow. Anyone's going to make any substantial change if you just keep having divided parties that never want, or divided people that never want to talk about these things. They're never going to get better. Or if they just never want to acknowledge that it's a real problem. That's my favorite thing. It's not really a problem because it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. Oh my God. Okay. That's the people. You need to have those conversations so people understand, oh, maybe I just wasn't aware of it because I'm not around it.
It's true.
All right. Ressler doesn't have much to do because, he spent 2 episodes doping it up, but he has Dembe's back. They're kind of partners in this episode. Park really doesn't get much to do. Aram, I gotta say, again, I don't think Aram has gotten much to do this season. Am I wrong in this?
Well, this episode seemed like it was more on par for what Aram would normally do. Yeah, he did he took Dembe's data and he explored it and he tried to present it and pitch it and then talk to Mr. Reddington. Yes, I said Mr. Reddington, like Aram says Mr. Reddington.
I caught that, but thanks for explaining it.
I agree that there hasn't been an Aram focused episode, like where the Faraday cage episode or something where he's like chasing down the bad guys or out in the field or doing some weird wacky thing, sticking his hands in toilets and whatnot. Yeah, Aram's been a little bit light this season, but at least in this episode, it felt like the Aram character that we knew from past seasons.
Fair enough. Well, they ask Aram for his help, and Aram is happy. Dembe stays. And it's official, our lives suck, by the way. I like that. That was a great line, or great delivery, I should say, where they're talking about all the rich people in the Cayman Islands and everything else. And he's just like, it's official. Our lives suck. Well, Aram finds some info that will help Red and Dembe, which is what we're going to get to. But that's mostly what once again, he found the important facts that solve the problem. I like when after he shows Ressler and then later Ressler's like, we found some information and da-da-da. I'm like, what did we do? You didn't do anything. You literally walked over to the monitor, man. What the hell? All right. Well, Dembe. Now we're back to Dembe. Dembe, we find out, stayed by Red's side. When Dembe woke, this is right after Liz died for the 19th time. When Dembe woke, Red was gone and he just kind of disappeared into the ether. He went and found Wicha and Mirza and started his monk life or whatever, and the organization needed someone to run it. So Dembe did. And now Red won't work with him because of the silly notion that Dembe's responsible. We'll come back to that. But we get flashbacks of Dembe taking over the operation while Red is distraught. And what did you think about that? Were you kind of surprised that Dembe took over the operation? And it never seemed like anything he would want to do. Not that he wasn't capable, just that he wouldn't want to do it because he seemed to not have the heart for it. He was just kind of, his heart was in protecting Red, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's a hard toe to walk, right? Because you don't know if Red's coming back tomorrow, if Red just went to the John. Like, that's
a long. I don't know what he ate.
I'm just saying, like, you have no idea when he's going to show back up, and you know what Red's propensity is to people that cross him. So he would expect Dembe to try to, make sure things are running smoothly until he gets a phone call to do otherwise. So Dembe's just doing what he needs to do in order to make things happen because things need to happen. So it's he works for Red, therefore I'm going to continue to work for Red until Red releases me from my contract. So I don't think he wanted to do it. He definitely was distraught about doing it, and he's more the muscle than the mind, if you will, in this case. But he did the best he could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about your corporate job, right? Your boss goes out for an extended leave. Someone's still got to pick up that work. And it's going to come down to you because you're the next one in the line of command.
Sometimes they're there and you still got to pick up the work.
Sometimes.
Bazinga. All right. Well, apparently we find out that his daughter Isabella does not approve of him being a law enforcement officer, because we find out throughout the episode that she hasn't talked to him in some time. And that was because she didn't approve of him becoming an FBI agent, a black man with a badge for a system of oppression. This is the part where I think some people probably felt like hammer over the head because they've heard this before. But sometimes you need to be reminded, even though you know it, you got to be reminded of the situation so that you understand the other conversation that was coming. So you look at both sides of that particular issue. They talk about George Floyd, Freddie Ray, Eric Garner, the list goes on and on.
Breonna Taylor.
Yeah. I know there is injustice and I know justice can be done. I love that line. I think that's a great point that should be noted. It was just an interesting dynamic because that contrast of both sides of that particular situation are very fascinating. But the situation and the conversation with Cooper and Dembe is one I've never heard before. I've heard this one before many times. But I've never heard the other side of that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
So, sad though. Sad that his daughter stopped talking to him over it.
Well, I mean, at the same time, Isabella wasn't exactly a fan of Dembe anyway for the stuff that he's doing with Reddington, because last time she was kidnapped by Solomon and dealt with all that back in season 3. So I don't think she's really like, stay away, Dad. You're trouble.
He says to Red, just admit you let your guard down too. I thought that was good. I like this episode because he's not where Dembe is now. I'm a big fan of, because he no longer has to tolerate. I can't talk because I'm, I work for this man. He's my boss. That whole, I got to pull back a little bit, like, okay, I got to let this go because he's not listening to me. I told him what I thought and that's it. He doesn't care anymore. He's like flat up. Admit you screwed up too, man. Admit it. And I like that. Throw it back at him.
You can say the words. He doesn't have to take Red shit anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, call him out on his crap because he's got a whole caseload of crap.
And I love that throughout the episode, multiple people say Red is nuts for thinking Dembe's responsible. Because I got so much hate mail for last week's episode for saying Red is nuts for saying Dembe's responsible. I'm just saying. The show said it.
55% of the fans said it.
Yes, there you go. Just because you believe something doesn't make it so. Other people can have other opinions. Your opinion's fine. My opinion's fine. Everybody's opinion's fine. But what is that Red was totally crazy for blaming Dembe for that.
Right. He jumps to conclusions on his mat. Absolutely.
Well, reunites with Isabella at the end, but she's going to go away, keep her daughter and his granddaughter safe. And she did say, you can be a police officer and a man who's proud to be black. And then Dembe reads his granddaughter, Wizard of Oz. When we have a conclusion of the episode where we have both Red and Dembe reading grandkids, my opinion, books. Very sweet moment. Very interesting association there too.
Yeah. I think that is another thing in the show going like, hey, there's a grandkid over here. This is a grandkid over here. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
I really believe they're just like, we're not going to say it, people. What more do you want to see?
Yeah.
I understand some of you don't like it, but
how many more parallelisms can we draw for you? Like,
exactly.
Camera one, camera two, camera one. Is it in focus yet? How about both eyes this time?
Oh my goodness. Well, Dembe shares responsibility. Marvin has no idea what the hell Red is talking about. That's the portion that I was referring to. But it comes up several times. I mean, Marvin tells Dembe that. Dembe even's like, yeah, I know. I got nothing to do with it. But, I should have been on my game. Well, no, you weren't. You didn't do anything wrong, Dembe, because around found proof it was somebody you didn't know. It's not on you. Red was wrong. It happens. Micha is his roomie now. The other sister left. That's kind of sad.
Yeah. So like you're just going to go through the family, Red? She's a woman.
No, it's not. It wasn't like that.
It was totally. That was exactly what he said in the episode. She's a woman.
That is not what he said.
She said she's a woman, so I gave up the bed, and she's a woman.
That is not what he said.
That's exactly what he said.
They're roommates. He said Mirsa's coming back. So Weecha she stayed to protect him, but they're not together. I don't believe they're together. I don't believe that.
Hey, you can do whatever you want to do and not be quote unquote together. I'm just saying.
That's true. That's true. I like this logic. Use this to my advantage. Let's see. So Marvin, once again, you're out of your mind. You blame Dembe for something he didn't do. You never should have designated Liz as your successor. She wasn't qualified. That's another concept that comes up, which is great that someone said that out loud because that was a nutty plan. So we have that out in the open. So what'd you think about that part?
The fact that Liz isn't qualified?
That Marvin flat out says this to Red, that you blame Dembe for something he didn't do. You never should have had Liz as your successor. That whole section. I mean, Marvin's really blunt with him. At one point, I'm like, Marvin, you might get killed over this. So you might want to just slow your roll.
Yeah. From two people. Red and Dembe can shoot you dead in your tracks. But this is the thing. He's the lawyer. This is the thing you pay your lawyer to tell you. Like, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. And I don't know if I can get you out of that. So I think this is another great job in the writing to say, like, let's stay true to these characters. A lawyer would call him out on his shit. And I love it. This is exactly right. Like, you wanted to give her the empire and it wouldn't have gone well. And then, oh, by the way, when you left, you did give your empire to somebody. It was Dembe and it didn't go well. So they're just really, again, drawing the parallelisms pretty heavily here.
Well, Elizabeth was dead. I was gone, and you killed that boy. Do those dots connect? That's where I'm 100% on Red. I think that was an amazing delivery because I'm like, yes, that's factual. That's one where Dembe's blaming him for stuff that's not his fault. She was dead. I'm not there. You killed that boy. That's on you, man. I thought that was a great delivery. Again, Spader, magic.
Yeah. Red didn't tell him to go after Baptiste. You went after Baptiste because you were running the operation. Sometimes stuff happens and you got to deal with the consequences.
I hate they say it, but collateral damage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Poor kid. But then again, Baptiste blew up his kid in the car, so I have a little less sympathy for him on that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe his kid wasn't quite dead. Maybe he still had a few gasps left, and you just blew him up, Dad.
Because you wanted to escape and care about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. You selfish son of a bitch. All right. Well, this is Van Dyke's spots. These are spots he went to. Aram found those locations, and he wasn't anywhere near Dembe, which means he didn't follow him there. Someone else took those pictures.
Or someone told Van Dyke where to be.
Exactly. So would you say we have a new big bad for season 9?
I think so. I think there's someone out there that could be, an enemy of Townsend's that was tracking or following or keeping an eye on the operation. And then once Townsend was out of the picture, they're trying to come in and take over Townsend's stuff. There were some fractures in how people were viewing Townsend throughout the course of last season. There's a lot that's going on here that is interesting to see where it could go. And it's got me intrigued enough to make sure I come back after the Olympics last week of February to see what this storyline is going to evolve into. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
And the big question is the same person tied into what's framing Cooper? Because Cooper ends up with Agnes. So maybe there's a tie there between Cooper with Agnes and then Red with this storyline, and the two shall meet somewhere around May. Got
to be connected, right? Got to be connected?
I think so.
Well, I mean, there is... I've heard some really cool theories in terms of who's framing Cooper. One Nate Bruce listener, he suggested that Red is the one who framed Cooper potentially in order to gain custody of Agnes. And since he's a relative, even though it hasn't been proven in court or anything, that he could have a claim. I thought that was an interesting look. I don't think that would be the way they would go, but I like it.
That fits the MO. I could totally see Red doing something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. There's another one that Panabaker's behind it. Should be interesting because she already controls the task force. Why would she need to do that? But that could be interesting. I hope not. I like having, at least somebody in upper government who's not dirty. It would be nice.
But then again, she did get that senator seat pretty easily. So
that's true. That is true. But I like the custody thing. That'd be an interesting dynamic and an interesting way to go because that would cause friction between Cooper and Red.
Right.
So interesting. But even though I like that because it would just be, wow, that's ballsy. I don't know if that would actually fit the show just because, I mean, Cooper's been nothing but welcoming to Red and Agnes. You know?
But I mean, it's not far from the truth. I mean, you go back to season 2 when Red had the flash drive about what happened in Kuwait, and it was kind of holding that over Cooper's head for a little while. So it's not like Red hasn't tried to frame Cooper before.
True. We finally get in this episode what, I was hoping for, which is Red apologized to Dembe because he was really kind of horrible to him, really. Said, "I'm sorry I abandoned you. Perhaps it did bring her some peace by knowing the truth." Look at that. Just think if you would have done that like 6 seasons ago. I'm just saying. And then someone led Van Dyke there, and we need to work together to find out who. So I'm sure that's going to be the ongoing narrative, trying to find out who that was and then stop them or do whatever he's going to do to them, which I'm sure will be horrible and amazing. And then we end with, again, Red reading Pippi Longstocking, I believe was the book.
That's correct. That's what Agnes asked Red to read to her when she left for school in the morning.
Yep. So Red's reading Pippi Longstocking to Agnes. Dembe is reading Wizard of Oz to his grandchild. So it's, I mean, I don't know. We already said it. So what else did you want to talk about from this episode? Anything left?
One thing that was in Pippi Longstocking, as you heard Red read the story, did you catch on how Red was talking about that she was talking to the captain? So you have like the small child talking to the captain, and remember, Red was Liz thought that Red would make a terrific captain from back in season 3. So you got a little bit more of that kind of showcasing of past conversations, and then bringing him forward in this kind of parallelism while he's reading the story at the same time.
And Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain.
Man behind the curtain, right? Dembe's the man behind Red. A lot of good stuff in here.
That's interesting. Good stuff. I thought it was a great episode. I would love to see more stuff like this. I just thought this is a really, really great episode. And everybody seems to love it, so I haven't heard anybody really be negative about it. Just that, I haven't
seen any bad comments about this one at all. So good job.
Which is always positive, right?
Good job.
Yeah, great job. Well, we've got a little bit more. We got some special agent intel coming up, so hang on for a minute. But we want to take a quick second to say thank you to those of you that are supporting the show by going to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Special big thanks to our honorary blacklister, Patricia. Also special shout out to our task force members, Judy, Matt, Karen, Marilyn, Ryan, Cindy, James, Jens, Justin, Lacey, Ari, or Ari, and Johnny, which are all official task force members. All these people receive cool gifts from us, and you can get a cool gift as well for donating at the $20 level or higher. If you want a cool t-shirt or a coffee mug, you don't have to stay at the $20 level forever, just a few months to get the cool gifts. And remember, we're putting out the episode early for all of you $5 patrons or higher. You get the show before anybody else. Just head on over to Patreon. That's patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Fill the fedora, throw $5 in the hat, and you'll keep the show live, loud, and independent here on the podcast airwaves. Stay tuned, though. We got your thoughts on this episode and more coming up right after this. You obviously love podcasts, but are you also a fan of movies and television? Do you want to listen to a show that reviews entertainment honestly and casts pretentiousness to the wind? That debates both film and TV topics in a fun, good-spirited way, while still getting to the heart of why we all love them so much? Then don't miss the award-winning weekly podcast, The Hollywood Outsider, now available on your favorite podcast app or at thehollywoodoutsiders.com.
Hey, Dembe loyals, this is Hisham Tawfiq. You are listening to Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Special Agent Intel. This is thoughts from the minds of listeners. Nicoletta Forlini. As we have seen tonight, Dembe has fewer faults than it seemed. But Red, from his point of view, was right. Say what now? One thing is friendship or kinship. One thing is the working relationship. If you do a job where making mistakes means living or dying, unfortunately, a serious mistake, if not a betrayal, leads to a loss of trust. The relationship between a boss and his right-hand man must be one of trust. If your second in command doesn't trust your judgment and goes his own way, it's time to part ways for the sake of both. That does not mean that there can no longer be friendship or love. I never thought for a second that Red would have killed Dembe. He's like a son to him. The Blacklist, not the Blacklist Exposed, because we're a podcast, that's a TV show. The Blacklist is just a TV show, so Red is pretty much back to working with Dembe already, because everyone has taken their blame, they have a new common enemy, and are giving themselves a second chance. But Red's anger and disappointment in the last episode were entirely justified. And after 9 seasons, the characters should have realized that they should ask Red for help, not betray him. The latter never leads to good results. I don't agree with that. I firmly believe that Red's anger and disappointment, which was proven this episode, were unjustified. Yeah, sorry.
Completely unjustified.
Yep.
Because it wasn't,
But I agree.
Because it wasn't his fault. Like he was being,
not getting this help will lead to bad results.
yeah, somebody else was setting Van Dyke in motion. It wasn't Dembe not being aware that it was there. I mean,
Right.
it basically gave that answer. So, all right, Monica Stolfa. Okay, let's add some more to the Liz is still alive theory.
Oh, dear God, let's not. Let's just move on.
Red reads to Agnes that Pippi Longstocking believes her father, who was believed by all accounts to be dead, is still alive. Spoiler alert, he is alive. Also, we now have a third person following Liz around. Was that person working for Liz? Why do they keep replaying Liz's death? It's like she's gone, but she's not gone. I need more wine. Also, if Liz knew the truth about Red, why would she need to show up and kill Red? There would be no need to meet him since she already knew the truth. Something tells me it was all a setup. P.S. Can we get some more Ressler and Dembe pairings, please?
Pippi believes her father's alive. Spoiler alert, he's alive. So Tom is still alive, is that what you're telling me? Because, no, he is dead. He is so dead. He's buried next to Liz, who is also dead. They're just dead. Now, I could still see them retconning it with Liz popping up at the end, but I would be so mad as a fan because how could you abandon your kid the same way that you were abandoned? You keep telling us how horrible that was once you found out everything, and you're going to do the same thing to your kid. That would be a total character slap in the face, I would say.
100%.
Personally.
Aaron is right.
Oh, Troy never says that. Chuck, I'm sorry, you want to add to that, probably.
This is the one thing that keeps coming up that I hear from fans is that because they keep replaying the Liz scene over and over and over again, as Monica said, they keep saying, did you notice that the bullet wound in the front of her is actually a small wound and the bullet wound in the back of her is actually the bigger wound where there's a lot more blood? So normally
that's an exit wound.
A bullet would come in on a small side and would exit in an exit wound. So technically Van Dyke didn't shoot her. There was a different shooter that shot her from behind Red and shot Liz through the front. That's the thing that everybody keeps kind of like focusing on. And I'm kind of like, it's a great thing, but I don't think that's the case. I think it was more just TV effect.
I mean, look, I think we would not be doing our jobs, I guess, as theorizers and podcasters and whatnot if we didn't acknowledge that they have now shown that Ressler left the scene, that Red left the scene, that Dembe left the scene. So is it possible she orchestrated that and that Cooper helped her because he was on site and Aram was on site and whatnot? It's possible, but they showed them grieving. So I feel like that would be a stretch. I think that's more fan hope than what the show was really doing. Now, they did get a ton of flack for Liz dying. I could potentially see in that as I could see them retconning that. I don't see them retconning who Red is. I just don't see that happening. I think that would kind of be a betrayal to the
I don't
whole
see them
series.
retconning Liz's death. I think Liz is dead.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just trying to be open-minded. I guess is the word.
I'm of the firm belief that not a firm belief, but like I support the theory and the theorizing that this was a setup to get to Red. Like somebody did this in order to get to Red, and it didn't go against Red's plan the way he wanted it to happen. So I think that is a very good possibility. You know, could there have been another shooter? Van Dyke didn't pull the trigger, and that's why Van Dyke kind of dropped his gun for a minute because Van Dyke was like, "Hey, wait, that wasn't me." But then he's like, "Oh shit, Red's going to shoot me because he thinks I did it." So that's why he raises his gun again. There's definitely possibilities there that there could have been another shooter somewhere else from behind Red, potentially. I mean, yeah, it's a good theory.
Yeah, that could work. Actually, that could work, and would explain why Van Dyke didn't keep his gun raised, which is what you would do if you were, aiming down the street at a foe.
Right.
You never drop your guard. So yeah, I could see that a lot more than I can that Liz is alive. I really think she's dead. There's very, very little doubt that she's dead.
So much blood. There's no way. Unless she had one of those blood packs in. I mean, I guess, and this is the thing, right? You already did the,
did it once.
I was going to say Katerina, but it's Tatiana Petrova. Tatiana Petrova gunned down by the Pavlovich brothers with, a bulletproof vest and fake blood bags and dragged off into. I mean, you've already done that. It's like, and you've already done the fake.
They already did that to Liz.
Yeah,
they already did it to Liz. She's already done it. That would just be so lazy. In my opinion, I mean, especially with Agnes is with Cooper. I guess you can make the argument
that Cooper's behind it.
That Cooper helped because then that would explain why she would give Agnes to him for protection. Because nobody's going to mess with it.
Yep.
Yeah. But I still think that's quite the stretch, and I just couldn't see that happening. I just couldn't, personally. But doesn't mean it's not possible. I'm not going to knock it out until, even though we've seen a tombstone, we've seen her body on the pavement, we've seen her friends grieving. It feels very much like she's dead. And, Megan's made no illusions that she wants to come back to the show. So, but you never know.
You
never know. Hey, if you're a fan, keep hope alive if you really want that to happen. That's what I would say. Just be prepared for that not to be the case. Chuck Gibbons. I honestly wasn't sure that 9 seasons in and without Bokenkamp at the helm that this show would be capable of putting out a Blacklist episode capable of reaching the heights of previous seasons. I was wrong. Very pleased to admit it. Bravo to the writing team and to the cast, but especially Hisham for bringing it. Bravo.
TC Casa said, "Hey, gents, any thoughts on a possibility that the person who is following Liz and Dembe, the new big bad, is the same person who's trying to set up Cooper?" I thought so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's been no evidence to date on this, but Agnes is with Cooper now, so there is a tie between Liz and Cooper. There always has been a tie, but for an outsider, a la New Big Bad, he ties Cooper to Liz via Agnes. Let me know your thoughts. Love the pod. Appreciate the work.
Love your love. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think we kind of agree that it's definitely a possibility. Until proven otherwise, I would say it's most likely, honestly. Because it feels like that, right? It's somebody that's coming after Red. Get Cooper to get to Red would make sense. Elena Dankovic, I hope I said that right. Guys, I think both of you think Liz is very dead, so don't bite my head off. I'm not going to bite your head off. But these are my random thoughts on why I think Liz might be alive. We are still very focused on Liz and that night. Yes, we are.
Oh, great.
The show keeps going back to that night again and again and again. I feel like, did they write Megan a check and said, "Here, look, we're going to use this every single episode for season 9. So we need to pay you at least a supporting player fee for that." I don't know how that works.
Here's the backstory episode, but I only have 39 minutes of the 42. So could you guys fill in the other 3 for me?
Yeah.
With some flashbacks.
Let's show Liz dying again. Can we get a different angle? No, we just got the one angle and she's not coming back to the show. Oh. Okay, we'll just show that same angle again. Just do it in slow motion this time. Maybe this time we have narration where Red narrates every frame of it.
And you know what's funny is that in a lot of these flashbacks where we've seen additional information than what we saw the original in the finale in season 8, I'm going like, did they shoot all of these at the same time and kind of had this plan last year? Because I haven't seen like a lot of the cuts make it look like it would have been anything different. Like even tonight, Dembe says the same thing, like, Raymond, I'm sorry. We have to go. It's like the same dialogue. So
yeah. She continues. There's zero chance that Liz would have shown up with a gun in her hand to kill Reddington that night after finding out who he is. She must have had a plan or reason to show up. I would disagree with that because maybe she realized why the intent was there and was just trying to go through with it and couldn't. But that would be my argument to that. But I see what you're saying. After Van Dyke shot Liz, he just stood there with a gun in his hand aimed at Red. He could have easily shot Red. A bit unbelievable that he just stood there and watched Red draw his gun and shoot first. I think it's possible that Liz and Van Dyke arranged this to allow Liz to fake her death. It would be better this way in order for her to protect Agnes and to hide. And she would have demanded that Van Dyke not kill Red after finding out who Red is. Just pause for a second. So he wanted to get himself killed? Because that's the only way that makes sense. And I can't see Van Dyke wanting to get shot on the street.
Well, I said there's 2 reasons why he hesitates, where he kind of like pauses and drops the gun. Either 1, he didn't shoot, like I said previously, or 2, he's like, holy crap, I actually did it.
Yeah.
It actually worked.
Continuing, I think Red will open the grave and Liz won't be there, and Red will spend the rest of the season chasing a ghost. Maybe Liz will become someone else, or maybe she won't. Also, when Megan's departure was announced, it was said that she will not return as a series regular. I think this leaves it open for her to make special appearances. Well, she's made special appearances, whether she wanted to or not.
Right.
So what do you say to that theory, or those theories, I should say?
I mean, the Liz not being dead thing, You
have to keep it open, right? Because I think we would be doing a disservice if we didn't. I don't want it to happen because I think that'll really shortchange the finale for season 8, personally.
I am of three mindsets at this point. One is I really love the finale, like so much. It was so powerful. It was beautiful. Megan's leaving the show. Like
I love the last 10 minutes. I don't love the whole.
Yeah,
the whole setup is still wonky, but
I'm just like, yeah, like it's a closure. It felt like right. It just felt good, And then there's the second part of me that's going, it would be a disservice to the fans if we didn't at least say, okay, there could be a possibility that Les faked it and that she is alive and blah, 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 blah. And then Cooper and Aram are in on it and Park's in on it, but Ressler's not and Dembe's not and Red's not. Which seems very unlikely because that's a lot of people to lie to keep it covered up. But then there's this like third part of me that's like the ever Troy conspiracy theorist. That's kind of like, yeah, like I want to protect my daughter. The only way to protect my daughter is to do exactly what my mother did to me. Like that's kind of poetic Shakespearean justice in a way that the show could go there. And I'm kind of like, I don't want to like it, but I kind of like it.
I don't necessarily like it. I wouldn't be mad at it. You know, I mean, I don't
precedent.
I don't like it because it kind of, there's definitely precedent. I mean, how many people have faked their death in this show? 1,000?
I mean, the precedent specifically that she's doing exactly what her mother did, like mother, like daughter kind of thing.
Sure. I just don't like it because I don't feel like that's who Liz was as a character. She would never leave Agnes that way. She did things different than her mother. But on the same token,
it frustrates me. It's like,
but I think we talked about that in the finale where, at the very end of the series, I could see that where Red finds out that she's actually alive and da-da-da-da. And I could see that. I don't think it'd be anything where you'd find out until the show was over, though. It would be like the last frame to kind of go, see, fans, we just made up for season 8. I know you guys were very mad that she died. Look, she's here. She's on a beach waiting for Red and Agnes to come out and hang out.
My problem is the fact that Aram and Park were also on the street corner. If it was just Cooper with Ressler chasing away and Dembe chasing away and taking, like if it was just Cooper that showed up over Liz's body, I'd believe it a lot more. Having 3 people in on the game, that's a lot harder to pull off. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And I could see them retconning this. That's the one aspect of John's ending that I think they would retcon.
Retconning the death.
Retcon the death. Yeah. Not who Red is. I don't think that'll change. I mean, and people keep sending messages. Well, you guys, you're just so stuck on the Red is Katarina, and why do you keep saying that? And da 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 da. I'm like, I've seen nothing to counter that. In fact, I've seen more to reinforce it. So I'm sorry. If I see something that counters it, then I'll address it. But I haven't seen it.
The grandpas
it seems like
reading
the show
to the
is
granddaughters.
It.
I mean,
yeah, it feels like the show is acknowledging it. It's just not going to say it out loud. They're never going to say something like that. I think they're past it, honestly. You don't even hear the allusions to who is Red anymore. You don't hear it anymore.
Right. Because
I feel like they answered the question as much as they're going to answer it. We're moving forward with different stuff. And that's fine, because I think everybody was over the who is Red. So it was time to move past that.
Yeah, because now we're on the who's framing Red. Who's framing Cooper?
Yeah, now it's who's framing
Dembe.
And yeah, it would be interesting.
And Aaron likes a good whodunit, so he'll stick around to the podcast for the last 13 episodes to find out a whodunit.
I definitely got to find out who done it. Who does it? Although I won't be there for February 25th because I'm actually out of town, and then I get back, and then I've got a film festival that I'm on the board of directors for. Can I plug real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely. Yeah, we're at the end.
The Beloit International Film Festival, if you're in the Wisconsin, Illinois area, begins February 25th, and I'm on the board of directors, so I'm just trying to make sure that full disclosure. but if you're, we're trying to build the festival up. So just check it out. BlightFilmFest.org.
And it's fun. It's like in a downtown area. It's the mom and pop ice cream shop, and you get to
all the local businesses are involved. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Omicron's messing up some stuff. We lost a couple venues because of that, but we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to have hopefully a hell of a time.
But you're literally like some of these places, you're sitting in the back room of the grocery store watching movies. It's really cool.
It's kind of cool. Yeah.
So it's a good way to bring the community together for
It's great. Businesses love it. I mean, it brings people together, and obviously it's been a little rough the last couple of years, but we're trying to get it going again.
If anybody could do it, you can, Aaron. I believe in you.
Don't. I came into it late this year, but next year it's gonna change.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna change some things. I'm gonna change some things. But so BlightFilmFest.org if anybody's interested. Okay, well, that's going to conclude this discussion. So now is the time to recommend the Blacklist to your friend, your enemy, or your neighbor. And when you do, please also recommend that they listen and subscribe to the Blacklist Exposed podcast. All the case profiles can be found at theblacklistexposed.com and everywhere great podcasts can be heard.
For more great Aaron and Troy hijinks, follow us on your favorite social media outlet. I'm at Troy Heinrichs. He's at Aaron Smirks. Together we are at the Blacklist GSM. We also have the Hollywood Outsider. So make sure you follow at Buy Popcorn, where we talk about movies and TV. And we just finished our 2 big episodes of the year. We did our Ho Movie Awards for 2021, and we also did our big movie TV preview for 2022. So make sure you go over to @BuyPopcorn on Twitter and thehollywoodoutsider.com for those great episodes. And we'll also be coming back this year, we think, with Beyond Westworld at Beyond Westworld. That's beyondwestworldpodcast.com.
Yeah. Also available at the Hollywood Outsider too.
Correct.
So you can get that. So, but yeah, and the TV episode, 25 new TV shows we talked about, upcoming 30 new movies. So a big episode. So if you're a TV or a movie fan, definitely check that out.
Yeah, don't forget to enter our profiling question for next week. Who tipped off Van Dyke?
Who did it?
Except for it's not for next week. It's for February 24th.
My God, that's quite the break.
It is. It is a little
3 episodes.
It's
man.
a little long. It's a whole month.
But it feels like these 3 were very kind of almost personal episodes, and then we're going to get into the Blacklist when we come back.
Yeah, I mean, for where the breaks have been, I felt like the episodes fit where the time is in the actual calendar, right? These were they knew they had 3 episodes. They can't really get into a big arc in 3 episodes, so let's just go ahead and tell some backstory to set up what the big arc is. And now we literally have the full streaming 13 episode season ahead of us for the rest of the way.
Exactly. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. We're going to get out of here, and hopefully you have a wonderful month. We will be back soon.
And go USA.
Oh, yeah. The Olympics, right.
Or whatever country you cheer for. We love everyone.
I'm going to go for China just to rile everybody up.
There you go. All right. Take care, all. Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs. That's at Troy Heinrichs on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinrichs.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsider.com or on Twitter at @BuyPopcorn. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of the Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.